I'm Rob Bryan, and this is my Trekzone Conversation.
Rob, thanks so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Now, people may not recognise your name, but you've made a couple of headlines this week. Tell us a little bit about what's happened.
So, I was part of a fan project, excuse me, to recreate the Enterprise D from Star Trek The Next Generation in Unreal Engine 4. It evolved over time. The initial goal for the project was just to create some of the room scene on the show, and not the whole ship. But I think fairly quickly it kind of expanded into, let's see if we can actually build the whole ship. And of course, with it being such a big ship, we hadn't even come close to completing that. And yeah, we were putting releases out as we developed the project. More people came on board, more people were interested in what we were building. We were putting semi-regular releases out, maybe every couple of months, 3 months, that kind of thing. And we managed to release 10 versions of the project in a couple of years. And last month, so 12th of September, we got a letter from CBS, which was basically a cease and desist. Please stop doing what you're doing, essentially. And that's kind of what's led to what's been happening online at the moment. We've had a few publications, writing articles on us. Reddit's very popular for this. There've been a lot of conversations going on the main Star Trek Discord about just people's opinions on what's happened. But yeah, that's basically it to date. We were working on a project to recreate the Enterprise, and yes, it was stopped.
What inspired you to do the project?
Oh, that's a great question. I was talking, funnily enough, I was talking to my parents yesterday about this, because obviously they've been following what's going on. And I said to them, do you remember when I started liking Star Trek? And they stood there for a minute and they were like, no, as far as we can remember, Rob, you've always been a massive Star Trek fan. So, it's kind of been part of me going back as far as I can remember. The original series was always fantastic, but I kind of grew up in the, late 80s, early 90s, and it was The Next Generation that was around then. That's kind of what I took to. That became, my favourite Star Trek show. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, to be able to visit that place that you grew up with and you liked so much, to be able to stand there on the bridge or in 10 forward, any of those sorts of things, if it could be made, that would be fantastic. And then, of course, in the past couple of years, we've had VR, which means that you can look all around you. It's, you put your headset on and you are there in that place. So for me, it kind of seemed like, okay, this is a perfect shot. Let's give this a go. Let's see if this can be built. That's basically what happened there.
It very much is just that continuation of a fan spirit and continuing to, or just building a hobby really in something that you love, and it's a very easy way to sort of get started and keep you going through all the learning phases, really, isn't it? Just knowing that it's something that you love and something else that I love, you want to keep learning about.
Well, that's it exactly. I'll be honest. When I started Stage 9 in mid to late 2015, we didn't put any releases out for a while. I didn't know anything about making a game like this. But for me, learning how it's done on something that I care about so much, the Enterprise D, and there are various members that came into the development team that, have got the same passion, same interest, and we're all learning from each other. Really positive, vibrant environment. It was it was fantastic. It educational for me, and just, really positive.
And I think that's really the driving spirit behind pretty much everything that we do. I mean, me here with podcasting and the website, Trekzone was a year 10 school project that's developed into this thing. But I guess at the end of the day, really, we're all sort of doing it for something that we love, and it's something that we don't really have a whole lot of rights over. We're just sort of playing and having a bit of fun, really, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't know that Star Trek belongs to CBS, and they own the property to it, and they own all the rights to it. And unless you are a licensee of the Star Trek license, then what you are doing isn't authorized by them. I mean, I suppose for a long while, I never really worried about that because, fan art has existed as long as I can remember, whether it be levels for Doom or Duke Nukem that have that are Star Trek based, or there's been a lot of stuff out there that isn't necessarily professional that has involved Star Trek. And so for a while, I thought, well, this is just that. This is just me working on, my kind of interpretation of fan art, and I don't know why that would be any risk. But I think what happened, this is just my guess. As the months went on and we were polishing the experience more and more, it was looking less like fan art and more like, something polished, essentially. And I've got a feeling that's part of the problem. It wasn't looking as, not to blow my own horn, but it wasn't looking as amateur as it did look previously.
It was looking absolutely fantastic, man, and it's really interesting to learn that it was on the Unreal Engine because following my fan film, Once More with Feeling, which I released earlier this year, I started having conversations with a company called AR Wall, and these guys have basically destroyed the green screen and found better ways of filmmaking on the cheap. They basically gone back to how was Hollywood doing all this sort of stuff, all this sort of CGI before CGI was a thing, and they went back to the rear projection screens. And so what this company called AR Wall have done is basically building studios with a massive rear projection screen instead of a massive green screen, and they've been creating these environments in the Unreal Engine. And we were actually looking at doing a new series of fan films for Trekzone in the years to come using this piece of software that they've got. And funnily enough, it was in the Unreal Engine. So, I was almost at a point of creating environments in the Unreal Engine, for want of a better term, virtual reality environments. But it unfortunately looks like that's now in the discouraged pile.
It seems that way. I mean, I got to admit, the guys at Epic that develop Unreal Engine, they move very fast. They put new releases out. I think it's once a quarter. And when I started using it, it was very powerful. But what it is today, is worlds away from what it was when I started developing Stage 9 on it, all of these new features. And like you were saying there, with AR, there's things that you can do where you can have a player in a VR headset, and then you can have a camera that's basically a virtual camera that can spin around that player and show them there in the environment. This is all straight from Unreal Engine. It's not just games anymore. Unreal Engine's moving towards movies. I think it was used in Rogue Squadron, the Star Wars film. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. And so basically what they've done is they've worked out a way of attaching it to the camera. So the projection screen will move as the perspective of the camera changes. So very, very similar to that VR, I guess, with the difference being that the headset, in inverted commas, is worn by the camera instead of the user. It is a powerful tool, and there are lots of things out there as well. I do think, though, that doing something for a fan film is still a lot different than sort of a game release, even a hobby game release. What's been your reaction, Rob, to the response from fans out there?
I suppose my first reaction to it was one of surprise. I knew we had a bit of a following, people that enjoyed Stage 9, and in fact we've had some emails while we've been running, from people that have said it, has taken them back to their childhood, and You know, they really appreciate it. So I knew we had a following, and that was part of what kept me going, the fact that people really enjoy what we were doing. But then after the shutdown, that following ballooned. Basically, the moment Stage 9's over, you know, a lot more people knew about it, and I would assume that's, you know, the coverage that we've had, which again I wasn't expecting. And for the most part, the coverage has just been very factual. Here's a thing that existed, and here's what happened to it. But it certainly put the project as it existed in front of more people, you know, to see, essentially. So my response to it, yeah, definitely surprise, and very humbling for me to sort of see people that it's hard to say. Okay, a lot of the response has been people that think CBS made a mistake. Now, I don't know where I stand with that, and it's difficult for me to give my opinion because obviously there's a very natural bias with whatever my opinion is there. I don't know if they made a mistake, but I know that they are fully within their rights to do what they did. You know, and in the latter months of the project, it was something that we talked about more and more. You know, how do we avoid getting shut down? And one of the paths we were going to take was approach CBS before that happens. And we didn't get the chance. You know, the cease and desist happened first. I tend to think that part of the reaction that's, you know, it's calming down now because it's been a week and a half. I tend to think that part of the reaction is the lack of comment from CBS, not necessarily the cease and desist, just, you know, people kind of asking them why they did this, us asking them why they did this, you know, us trying to have a conversation with them, just very much people. It's that silence that has been the most frustrating. Not that they're not within their rights to do it, just frustrating, I suppose.
It really does sort of trying to articulate the best words here, and I mean, I'm on sort of both sides, you know, and same as you, sort of totally accept and appreciate their position. They can do this. They're looking after the licensees that are paying them good amounts of money and that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, the fans are out there creating the content, or creating some content, where it's filling the void that's there, from certain fans that want other types of content, and other types of content that the studios don't necessarily see as profitable anymore, like, you know, progressing forward with the series, or going back and reliving what we had there with the Next Generation. You know, it sort of almost ties in with that golden age of Star Trek. If we had remastered DS9 and Voyager to talk about, would we sort of be this hungry for that era again?
Well, it seems to me, and again, this is just my guess, that there isn't much of an interest in 90s Star Trek from CBS. In fact, my opinion, that there's a concerted effort to try and move people away from 90s Star Trek. Now, you know, I think it's pretty obvious why. You've got Discovery out there. They're working on the new Picard show. And I think they want to leave the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager in the past. The problem is with that, if that is the case, and I don't know if that's the case, that leaves a lot of people out there that love those shows that haven't really got, you know, they're not getting any new exposure to anything from that part of the universe. And that's what made me, and, you know, what has made other people sort of go out there and sort of build in that universe yourself. And I think it's a shame if they are trying to move away from 90s Trek. In my opinion, that's unfortunate, you know, because I think people do yearn for it.
It certainly is. It is a tricky one, but I think as a bit of a final word, Rob, I think that, and of course, people have sort of tied it together because this is only the second time that CBS has issued a cease and desist in this century. So there's a little bit of an Axanar parallel with some of the critical fan response and that sort of stuff. But I think the biggest thing to your credit is the fact that you received that letter. And you've downed tools, as unfortunate as it is and as finite as it is, but it's not the end for you, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I think it might be the end of that, of stage 9. But we've already said as a team, we want to move on to something else. We all enjoy working together. A lot of the followers of what we were doing with stage 9, it was a very collaborative effort. We had lots of conversations with those guys, and we don't want to lose that. We want to kind of keep what we had going, even if it's not with Star Trek. So it's certainly not the end for us. But yeah, it's going to be the end for stage 9 because as soon as I got the cease and desist, I knew. As soon as I got it, I knew I wasn't going to fight it. That would be a bad move. So yeah, I think closing the book on that. Taking a bit of a breather and then moving on to something new and exciting is probably the way to go.
Do you have any ideas yet of where you'd like to go?
That's a good question. We're having quite a lot of chats in the team about what we want to do. One of the concepts that's come up is basically stage 9 was kind of evolving over time. And I quite like the fact that was happening naturally, that it was, it was growing and sort of branching out as time went on. But I think we got a fairly good idea of what the end product would have been. And I think one of the things that we want to look at is something in our own IP, in our own universe, that pretty much sticks to those ideals, without relying too much on Star Trek, of course, but that utopian future. If we were to build another starship where you could have multiple people, even if it's role playing, all on the ship performing different roles, or just there to socialize in one of the lounges, and with VR compatible. But basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there's a lot to be taken from stage 9 that made it something special that could be moved over to a new project. Now, I don't know if that is what we will do. Like I say, there's still a lot of discussions going on, but I think that's one of the things that really kind of captures my imagination.
Fantastic. Well, Rob, good luck with it all. I really appreciate your time on today's show, and thanks for having a Trekzone conversation.
No problem. Thank you.